Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Musician's Mentor podcast. I'm your host, Travis Mark, and today I have the pleasure of speaking with singer-songwriter and finger-picking extraordinaire, Garrett Owen. Garrett is an amazing songwriter based out of Fort Worth, Texas, and was actually referred by a good friend of mine named Taylor Tatsch. In fact, him and Taylor Tatsch have even done a cover of Heart Shaped Box, which I strongly suggest you check out. We actually talk about it in this interview. And while you're doing that, make sure you check out Garrett's original songs. The guy's got some wonderful compositions. Also, before we jump into today's interview, I want to let you know, if you are local to the New Orleans area, the Musician's Mentor podcast is super proud to be putting on our first Writers in the Round event starting July 2nd at the Satin Bar, just off of St. Claude Avenue. The music will kick off around 9 p.m. and there's some stellar artists performing, including myself. Shameless plug over there. But come check it out. Entrance is only $5 and you'll be supporting some great original music. In addition to that, please make sure you leave us a rating or review on whatever streaming platform you're currently listening to this episode on. And don't forget to share these interviews with your like-minded friends or family or anybody who you feel might be interested in these. That's enough of my rambling. Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce to you the one, the only, Garrett Owen. Garrett Owen, dude, thank you so much for, giving up your time. And I'm looking forward to this chat. I've wanted to talk to you for a while because our mutual friend, Taylor Tatsch, told me that I should check you out. And I did. And you're awesome. We'll talk about some of your music and your writing and all that sort of stuff. But before we do, let's start this podcast how I start every podcast. And that is me randomly and sort of weirdly asking you to give yourself a bit of a brief introduction. Tell the world who Garrett Owen is, please.
Sure, cool. Yeah. Again, thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it, man. My name's Garrett. Garrett Owen. I my parents were missionaries and lived in East Africa from when I was 2 till I was 10. And then South Louisiana from age 10 to 13. And then I did all of my high school years in South America and Ecuador. I started playing guitar at 14 in Ecuador. I was really, in a way that I'm not crazy about, I was surrounded by a ton of like worship music and stuff because of my parents being missionaries and whatnot and going to Christian schools. And none of that stuff ever appealed to me at all. I was pretty much from the word go, I was into hiding music in. I could open up the elevator door, the elevator that went to our apartment in Ecuador. I could open it up between the 6th and 7th floor, and there was a giant hole in the wall. And I would hide all of my very, very, very far from Christian CDs in the CD cases. I would hide in this hole that you could access by just stopping the elevator and opening the door. It's very like a super stupid gangster move almost.
But kind of cool.
Kind of a fun habit actually. I guess I started out trying to play more metal than anything else, but the stuff my dad, what he listened to, obviously, it can have an influence on you. And he was really into Dylan, Van Morrison, Jim Croce, James Taylor, Paul Simon, all the classic like 60s, 70s singer-songwriter vibe kind of thing. And then I started trying to study a lot of kind of classical style guitar on my own, just by getting books and trying to listen to as much stuff as possible. Started spending all of my allowance on jazz CDs when I was like 17. Yeah. It took me, like a whole year of listening to that stuff to realize I was hearing somebody play a vocal melody. Because I at least for me anyway, first start listening to jazz, having not been exposed to it by anybody who knows anything about it, just trying to expose yourself to it, you don't really know what you're hearing. It just sounds like a bunch of notes and chords that some of them sound like they go together, and a lot of it sounds like it doesn't. It took me like a year to go, oh, like this Miles Davis version of My Funny Valentine is the same set of melody and chords as Frank Sinatra Chet Baker, My Funny Valentine kind of stuff. Um, then I ended up trying to study jazz in college. I'm going the super long route here, but
No, this is great. Gives us
yeah,
an idea.
yeah, and ended up trying to study jazz in college. Decided it was going to make me shoot myself or commit suicide by Vicodin. It was just so hard and kind of surrounded by like the biggest snobs in the world. Can be people that are really great at jazz, but uh, like my instructors were kind of assholes. So I think yeah, after 2 years in the jazz program, I quit, and then I started writing. When I started writing songs at 23, as I was writing like the simplest songs that I've written, and it's only now in the past year, over the last couple albums worth of writing, that I've started to embrace like my earliest roots and like actually wanting to play really complex styles and trying to find a way to include that in my writing. It's taken a long time, but I feel like I'm finally starting to get there where I feel comfortable with the idea that I can make something. I at least hope anyway that the universe can help me make something that is enjoyable, even if it has 14 chords in the verse and 12 chord changes in the chorus and sections that are wildly different from each other.
Yeah.
It took me a long time to process it all in a way that I can really, where something in the air around me can really help me use it in a way that's enjoyable and tasteful, even though technically it's kind of a lot more sophisticated than what I started out writing.
Yeah.
Because what I started out writing was actually in response to all that complexity that it was just too much. It's way too much when I was 19, 20, 21. It was all kind of driving me insane.
There is complexity to your music. I mean, I was listening to a bunch of it over the last few days, and it's kind of deceiving because if you're kind of
Oh,
just listening on the surface, it sounds, oh, well, this simple melodies, but pretty melodies. But when you dig a little deeper, especially on like, I mean, it's kind of folky, I'm sure you've got your own genre for it, but dude, there's some stuff going on with your picking hand that's very intricate. And I mean, like, I mean, obviously it's different, but from what I heard and from what I was listening to, and this is not necessarily what we're going to discuss today, but for those interested who want to go and check Garrett out, um, there's like elements of Merle Travis picking kind of style meets Lindsey Buckingham picking style meets, you mentioned earlier Paul Simon. There's like elements of all of that stuff in there, which for those who play guitar, they will know those aren't easy things to achieve,
it, right. Thank you.
No worries.
Yeah, I just got done literally. Saturday night was my last night doing this little run, opening 6 shows for a guy named David Ramirez. And yeah, I think on night two of that run, we played Oklahoma City, and somebody came up to me after and was saying, "Man, that fourth or fifth song you did reminded me so much of Lindsey Buckingham." The it I've been playing that song live for almost a decade, and haven't started getting that feedback on that until pretty recent. So I don't know if anything's changed. Um, maybe it's just the listenership is different. Maybe like no, maybe it's only right now that like somebody who likes Lindsey Buckingham is hearing me play. But yeah, no, that's pretty cool. And I have a moment in my life that makes that make sense. Like I was in high school and I wanted to be playing guitar all day, but couldn't because when you're in high school, you have to go to school.
Yeah.
I would I would take my guitar with me to all of my study halls throughout the week at school. I had like three study hall teachers basically. Which they never made me do school. they would just let me play guitar all through the study hall.
Awesome.
It was pretty crazy. But and this guy in particular, study hall aide or whatever you call him, Jeff Swinson, he gave me like a this was, we're talking 2001, 2002 time. And this dude gives me a burned CD that just had a bunch of Lindsey Buckingham stuff on it. And of course, the first track that he wants to show me, because I'm a guitar player, the first thing he wants to show me is it Big Love? Is
Big
that the
love.
name? Okay. And I don't know if it really blew my mind, or if maybe I was trying to like, maybe I was actively trying to not be impressed by it or something. But I can't remember what my reaction. But I can look at that moment, and then I can listen to me play my song Sad Eyed Son, and I can make the connection. Like, yeah, it does actually make quite a bit of sense that somebody who likes Lindsey Buckingham hears me play Sad Eyed Son and goes, like, dude, I hear like a ton of Lindsey Buckingham you're playing. Like, yeah, in that way, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because I was exposed to it at a time when I was a few years away from deciding that I was going to be exclusively like a finger picker. I didn't go full on exclusive, never play with a pick again until after jazz. But I was on my way
Yeah.
to going. I'm just I'm just going to be a finger style. Everything else can just kind of, I mean, almost like when somebody's like really good at shooting a pistol or something, and you hand them a shotgun, but they probably know what to do with it. It's just not their weapon of choice, maybe.
Exactly.
Like to a degree, like I can still play with a pick, but it's nothing like what it was when I was actually playing with a pick all the time. And now I've spent almost 18 years only being fingerstyle.
That's amazing. I want to kind of jump back a little before we kind of get into the real music career kind of stuff. And
Sure.
you did touch on it earlier. I mean, now you're obviously based in Texas. You were born in Texas, but you did spend a lot of time in Ecuador, and,
Mhm.
and obviously you spent a lot of time in a continent that I'm actually from, Africa. So
Great.
what I'd like to ask, and obviously not just about Africa, but about Ecuador and, all your moving around with your family, how do you think all the moving around in these different places affected your mindset and outlook as a musician now, if at all?
Well, I think like maybe the easiest way is that I'm not always good at traveling. Not always the best at it by any means, but I'm comfortable with it. Really comfortable with it. I think uh, living in all those places, and then living in East Africa, which people don't seem to understand that, like me living in East Africa, in some ways has almost nothing in common with your experience probably in South Africa.
Yeah.
Like they're just such vastly different. People don't understand how big Africa is, and like the way I try to explain is to go, Tanzania is one of the smallest countries on the continent, and it's the size of Texas and New Mexico combined. And then people start to go, oh wow,
Yeah.
it's actually making the continent sound much bigger. When somebody asks me like, "Oh, you were a missionary, or your parents were missionaries in Kenya, you probably know somebody, and you probably know a friend. You might know a friend of mine that grew up in the Congo." And I was like, "Not a chance,
Yeah.
not a chance in hell, dog."
Dude, it happens to me all the time. I mean, this is the third place that I've lived. I live in New Orleans now. And
Oh wow, nice.
I've not met many South Africans down here, but I also lived in London for 20 years, give or take. And dude,
Oh,
sometimes I'll meet somebody passing through from London or Britain in particular, or sometimes they'll know somebody who knew somebody from South Africa, and they'll be like, "Oh, you've got to know John." I'm like, what? I think the same could be said for how, you know, people who've never traveled to the States don't seem to realize how different each state can be.
Oh,
You know,
yeah.
there's different cultures, different foods, different slangs, different ways of talking, different
Uh,
fashions. And it's like, listen, until I moved to the States, I didn't know that either. I mean, Texas alone. I know musicians in Texas that never leave Texas and generate hundreds of thousands of dollars a year by just touring Texas in that red
mm-hmm.
dirt scene. You know, it's like, wait a second, Texas is that big? Yes, it's that big. So people don't always understand, which
Oh,
you
yeah.
can't kind of hold against them if they've never explored. But I
Mhm.
just thought it was interesting. You're moving around that much. I know that you did say earlier that you really kind of only got into it later in life, but you know, your fundamental years can still affect how you write and how you think and all those kinds of things.
A lot of that stuff affected me on such an internal level that I never feel really behooved to use like names of countries in songs,
Yeah.
or but I do tend to write in a way that has has convinced some of my listeners that I'm like very world weary in a way that just comes from like having seen a lot of stuff around the world at an early age, like being exposed to like a level of poverty that you basically cannot find in the United States. Um, Seeing struggles and early on, being familiar with people's struggles in East Africa, and then now in my adult life, having to take moments to go like, wow, I've become really soft since I was a kid. Like I I used to have like a much deeper internal respect for people's life struggles that now I'm fully like mostly a first world person that I have first world struggles, I have first world concerns, whereas there were times when I had to daily remember, okay, don't touch the shower head because there's electricity going directly to the shower head to make hot water come out of it,
Yeah.
which is just like a really poor design that you will almost only maybe you will only find in East Africa. I don't know if they have that problem in South Africa, but uh, um, just things you have to think about on a daily basis in the third world that you'd never have to think about
Yeah.
here in the States. And I'm pretty much fully now adapted to being like a really soft white dude, you know?
At what age did you end up back in Texas? And with the music in particular, the songwriting, when did that start to creep in? If you can remember kind of specifically. And then even further than that, essentially, when does it become your main focus that you're like, I'm going to do this. This is going to be my thing.
Yeah, after kind of in my mind kind of failing at jazz or at least getting super disappointed with it and just having to in my mind I made this realization that I was never gonna be like a current jazz player that's making records that sell enough for you to make a living, or that you get enough exposure as a jazz player to actually tour playing jazz, which is almost impossible. I mean,
Yeah.
they're like the Brad Meldos of the world. In the guitar sphere, there's like Kurt Rosenwinkel. Maybe even you could lump Julian Lage in there, but he seems to appeal to a lot of people. Um, yeah, it was after jazz that I started, just as a way of processing, songs started just coming out of me from time to time. And I've still never gotten to the place where I really call myself like a daily writer. I mean, the only daily writing I do is journaling. I don't, I don't really make like a super daily practice of trying to make like the art. Like that stuff is stuff that I mean, like against what people are trying to teach on social media right now. Like you should like, or you know, the Stephen Pressfields of the world going around saying like you need to visit the muse every day for 4 hours a day, or you'll never get anything out of yourself. I have to take more of like an easy does it kind of approach.
Okay.
Like visit the muse a few times a week. Try and cultivate a space around me that maybe makes it possible for God and the universe to give me something, as opposed for me just so actively trying to do something.
Yeah.
Whereas if I get so wound up like trying to make this thing happen, it seems to just run away
Yeah.
and and never want to come back. Where if for me, if I take kind of an easy does it approach, I allow myself up to 2 years to write songs sometimes.
Wow.
I'd write like to finish a single song. And I just everybody's different. I'm not even saying that's what works for me because it takes forever. So maybe that might be the definition of it not working. uh,
I think you hit the nail on the head. I think it's different for everybody. I don't think there's a right or a wrong. And
uh,
to touch on your social media comment there, I get into social media discussions a lot on these interviews. And so I'm not going to
uh,
drag you into that mud because there's other things I want to ask you about.
it can go south real fast.
Yeah, yeah. And I've been thinking about it a little bit differently lately in regards to like, it must be so tough as like a teenager now, right?
Uh,
Because you've got so much information, which is great if you are the type of person who can tunnel vision your goal, right? So you kind of think, I want to get from point A to B, and you don't look anywhere further than that, and you go and research these things. And if you are that kind of self-disciplined kind of individual, that's incredible because of the help you can find and the information you can find. But if you are easily distracted, and 99% of humans are,
oh yeah.
I think social media can be quite daunting because, hey, I want to try and get into songwriting. Now, this is all hypothetical. I want to try getting into songwriting. And so I go online and you find somebody who goes, well, you've got to do this for 4 hours a day. And you go, oh, man, okay. Dude, that can kind of turn into your jazz experience where
Hmm.
as a young up and coming singer, songwriter, musician, okay, I'm trying to do this every day. I don't really have time. You don't know, again, everyone's got a different background. So like someone
Hmm.
could be in a situation where 4 hours a day might just not be doable for them. But they also
Oh yeah.
might not yet be at an age where they can rationally think, well, I could do 40 minutes a day. And so, like, they get overwhelmed. And I think just some of it becomes so overwhelming. There's such an influx of material and information, which is incredible. I sometimes wish it was there when I was younger. But some days, with that being said, 50% of the time, I'm also extremely grateful that it wasn't. Anyway, let's shoot
I
forward
mean,
now.
I guess my one thing to like expound on what you just said, I think some of it is losing our ability to be okay with enough solitude just to do something by yourself.
Yeah.
Um, if I had a phone when I was in high school, there's no way that I would have had so much time to read and learn stuff from guitar magazines. Because for the first 6 years that I played guitar, every single thing I learned, it was either by ear or from guitar magazine tabs.
Yeah.
And and I, and if I had a phone when I was in high school, with my brain, there's no way that I would have focused so much on guitar. It was
Yeah.
like, I mean, by the time I was 17, I was trying to play for 8 hours a day. It wasn't really possible, even at that time. It wasn't really possible for me to like hit the real 6 to 10 hours a day marker trying to play guitar until I was like 18 and 19 because I took, or 19 and 20 because I took the GED 17 or 18 or
Mm.
something in there. And took the GED so that I could have like my own personal gap year, but not to go anywhere, but just to play guitar all day for that year.
Yeah.
But,
Well, you see it in your playing. It worked.
hey,
Just
hey.
keep doing what you're doing.
Right.
I don't want to get too personal. So if I'm overstepping here, please you let me know.
Okay.
I read on your bio that you did struggle a little bit adjusting when you guys moved back to Texas, went through a little bit
Oh,
of a
quite a
tough
bit. Yeah.
time. We don't need to go into all the details there if you don't want to. But what I would like
Sure.
to know is if music helped you at any point during this difficult time, and if so, how?
Yeah, I think when you struggle socially, if it's like you have to be a bit unbalanced to feel like records and CDs are like your best friends. But but man, it's better than nothing. Definitely better than nothing. I spent a lot of years where I kind of felt like my CDs, and my Sony Discman, my Sony like Walkman Discman thing. I had I had one model like, from middle school in Ecuador all the way like till college. I had this one particular Discman, and when I realized that I had lost that thing somewhere in my mid 20s, if I was like, oh no, a part of me just died.
Yeah.
It was like because I had held this gray Discman with like a little red, it's like a bright red shiny icon in the middle, and then the Sony thing underneath it. I had walked around with that thing in high school, just walking all over Quito, Ecuador, to get around. Because Quito is one of those cities where, as a high school kid, you can just walk pretty much anywhere you want to go if you live in the city.
Mm.
Um, and so I would just walk all over with my headphones in, listening to my Discman, and yeah, when I realized that I'd lost that thing for good somewhere in all the mess of like moving around and stuff, and or moving back to the States, or maybe somewhere in college, maybe I threw it away or lost it. I don't know. But when I realized I just didn't have that thing anymore, I was heartbroken.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally understand that. Yeah.
but but I think also as a missionary kid, if you move around a lot as a kid, you develop friend like relationships with books, clothes, uh, your knickknacks, your things that you adorn your room with. You start to think of those things as your friends. Yeah, it's like every 5 or 6 years you losing your actual friends. So you have to think of your belongings as or your social network.
Yeah, it's almost what I guess helps you create an identity. Whereas a lot of like adolescence, you start to, your friends can help shape that, It must be tough. I mean, I
Mhm.
was never in that situation, so I can't necessarily relate, but that's got to be tough, man. I mean, well, again, positives and negatives. Positives, you get to experience things
Yeah.
that nobody else ever will. Negatives are some of the things you're probably talking about, but I suppose it depends how you spin it.
But the positives being that with music, you can put these things in your ears and you hear the human voice. You or if you're just listening to purely instrumental jazz or something, you you're hearing something that's mimicking the human voice. So it does it's it's at least a somewhat tactile way of hearing and still being a
Mm.
part of humanity. I mean, even if you struggle so much with social skills like I did when I was in college, that like my only friends when I was in college were other kids that were in jazz ensemble. I didn't have
Mm.
any other friends. I didn't, and even in that circle, I felt like I got invited to like
Mm.
very few things. but but I had a friend from Sweden in college. She went to this little college with me in Levelland, Texas, where people were coming from all over the world to study bluegrass, and I was there to study jazz. But I was in a bluegrass history class. I had 4 or 5 friends that were literally just majoring in like fiddle, mandolin, thi-
Yeah.
instruments like that, and they were getting there's emphasis on bluegrass. So it's like, yeah, I was starting to kind of figure out how to find my
Yeah.
tribe socially that way. Um, so that's definitely a positive, and that's definitely a positive that music provided.
Let's talk songwriting. Talk to me about your creative process. And like, are there any tools or methods that you possibly implement within your writing nowadays that you wish you had possibly employed back when you were younger and started writing?
Well, yeah, I guess that's a bit hard to say, but I'll try and yeah, throw something out there. I wish I'd been a little more able to just kind of immediately pull on what I had learned from jazz when I was younger, but I also think maybe it took a long time for that stuff to get so internalized that I could use it like it's just sitting there in my toolbox right in front of me. Maybe it was at that time those chord structures and kind of ability to reharmonize throughout a writing process. Um, Maybe at that time it was like in a toolbox, but it was in a toolbox that was like 50 feet away from me. Whereas now, like it's much easier for me to just kind of pull from that to affect my at least my chord writing. Uh, The way I approach lyric writing is what makes is part of what lets me take forever to write songs. I think I'm even more willing now sometimes to try and find something that works and to give myself a bit of a break to go. I'm gonna get through this creative process that I'm in right now. I have to reach the point where I'm okay with doing something less than perfect, doing something that feels less than totally cohesive, lyrically maybe, or even song section wise, because it's more important to me that I do something than that I do something that is absolutely just pristine and perfect. It's at the end of the day, it's more important that I more important to finish something at all that than to finish something that's just they're not all going to be the best thing you ever did. And sometimes it feels like a cop out saying that, like, oh, like I'm getting better at accepting myself, or I'm getting better at trying to get better at um, doing something at all is more important than doing like the most perfect thing you've ever done. Um, and sometimes that trying to take it easy on yourself will get me through a writing process. Whereas sometimes when I take 2 years to write songs, it's because I'm just not happy with anything that's coming out of me past the point where I get to a point where the song go. Everything that's coming out of me after this point is just trash. Like, well, and then maybe I'll keep going, and then I'll start to go. There's something in this trash that can help me move forward. I just have to find it, or it just has to be something to lead me in the next right direction. But but yeah, I don't approach songs from a concept point of view. I don't really care that the entire song for me. I don't really care that it really be all about one concept, as long as the listener can can truly get make their own interpretation of it. That's way more important to me than did I tell like a cohesive story that you understand like line by line. Like I'm I have no interest really in. I mean, I respect it, and I used to feel really guilty about not being able to do it, but I'm never gonna be like a John Prine or a Bruce Springsteen style writer where just these great story songs. I'm more of an imagery, more of a not a poet per se, but really influenced by poetry that isn't always easy to make sense out of. Like I like a lot of children's poetry that just kind of that tends to meander in these almost fantasy that I can understand, not fantasy like up in space, not fantasy like the Matrix.
The red pill or the blue pill?
But, right.
No, I get that. And I kind of appreciate the fact that some people make it sound so easy. And again, it's different for everybody. You mentioned earlier journaling. Do you ever find that any of what you journal makes it into things like lyrics or anything like that?
For me, very seldom, super seldom, unfortunately, because or maybe it's fortunate, but yeah, I do actually. I make a pretty hard distinction between like, what I'm trying to achieve through journaling, and then when I'm trying to contribute to like art. So I mostly use journaling as a way to make space in in myself. So journaling is a lot of it's like very a lot of it's pretty angry. A lot of like frustrations come out in journaling, and yeah, I think I mean, there's a good bit of anger expressed lyrically as well. But through the journaling, I'm just trying to get stuff out. I don't care about spelling. I don't care about punctuation. I don't care if it's legible. I don't care if any of the thoughts are connected at all. I'm just trying to get stuff out of myself to make space for for God and the universe to try and fill that space with something that can be useful creatively. Uh, I do think of it as like a super spiritual. This journaling, at least at its best, kind of allows me to make space inside myself, like going for a long walk or spending time at your favorite nature preserve or something. Those things just allow you to create enough emptiness in yourself that something can then fill that again. Yeah, as opposed to just if I never do any of those things, I find myself just chronically clogged, and then there's not space for something to go through in the first place. But there has to be space. So the journaling is part of creating space, getting all the stuff that just inundates us, trying to put that somewhere else. So it's not just taking up chronically taking up space in my hard drive or something. So, but very rarely, I will every now and then I will write something, think to myself like, "Oh goodness, that could be a line. That could actually be a line." And but it's always really surprising because I'm never using journaling hoping to get a line out of it. Just using journaling hoping to create more space inside myself for for God and the universe to try to fill it with something else.
Yeah. Yeah, makes sense. What advice, if any, would you give up and coming songwriters, especially those potentially wanting to try and pursue a career in music?
Oh man.
Yeah, yeah, I know. It's such a loaded question. But I mean, are there any topics you believe or feel that aspiring songwriters should try and work on? I don't mean lyrically topics. I mean like, some people get so good at the art side that they never worry about the business side. Some people worry so much about copywriting and publishing and stuff like that. They don't really worry enough about the art side. And et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Are there any things that you feel aspiring songwriters should try and work on if they are looking to try and become songwriters or musicians?
Longest answer in the history of this question. I hope that is what I'm about to accomplish. uh, my grandmother is 92 years old. She is 100% Japanese, real Japanesey Japanese. She is from the Hokkaido region of Japan, which is a region of Japan that I believe gets that it snows in that region of Japan 3 to 5 months out of the year. She's a descendant of a group of Japanese people called the Ainu people. So when people look at me and think that I don't look Japanese, it's actually because the Japanese parts of my face I inherited from a group of Japanese people that they kind of tried to exterminate. They tried to implement a managed decline of this people group in Japan called the Ainu people. They were kind of a very outcast portion of Japanese society. That's a portion of Japanese people that my grandmother comes from. She has Alzheimer's and dementia now, so I get paid to help take care of her. I'm not the only person involved in taking care of her, and I'm definitely not even the person doing the hardest work taking care of her. But I mean, so that's actually the thing that I make a living at right now. I just
Okay.
my family has always told me if you have a good opportunity come up, go do it. We'll take care of grandma however we need to. So when I had this opportunity to do 6 shows opening for David Ramirez, like kind of Oklahoma and Texas run, it was very immediate. They were like, "Yeah, say yes to that." So I got to spend the better part of the last 9 nights making money, playing shows, getting in front of some really nice crowds, selling some merch, feeling like a rock star a couple times. But yeah, career stuff, I just don't know how to think of it that way, really, because I think of it so much in just like artsy, spiritual stuff that I have that like I won't make the effort to even like learn how to do my own recording in terms of making demos. Like I still make demos in the demo app on my phone. Like that
Oh
I
wow.
pay like $30 a month for this demo app and I make demos through that thing in my phone. Whereas like one of my good friends who's a very famous artist, he's like he has, he has the infrastructure that he he had somebody build a or where he bought a property that has a barn on it, and he's turned that barn into this studio. And his goal is to have nothing with like to his goal is to create a recording like a demo making process in that barn where there are no computers involved, no phones involved. I mean, I'm probably never going to get to that place. I mean, never say never, but I don't see me ever doing that. Uh, and I'm not the type to just flood social media with content. I'm not really the type to. So as far as like building a career, the way that we feel pushed to in this like technology driven society, I don't even know how to approach that. I know what other people do, and I see it, and I just go, "Wow, that's amazing." I can't do that. Just,
Yeah.
but so the things that happen to me, they happen because artists that are more popular than me take a liking to me, and they seem to think that they would be comfortable being around me in green rooms there, or they seem to like the idea of me opening for them for a week or sometimes weeks at a time if I'm lucky.
Yeah.
But my best opportunities musically have come through experiences like that, or things like that somehow taking shape. When I was getting over my last breakup, I took myself on a trip to a town outside Kansas City so that I could visit the Jesse James Museum and so that I could visit the Pony Express Museum. So I bought an Airbnb out there, and I was looking at the information on my Airbnb host, and I see that something it says in her information. It says she's also a life coach.
Hmm.
So I call her up and I go, "Hey, I'm the dude staying in your Airbnb right now. I see that it says here you're a life coach. Could we hang out?
Yeah.
And she told me that I should stop searching for the love of my life for a while, and that I should try and find 3 things to do every day that are in the name of progressing my music career forward or pushing that forward. But they can't be playing guitar and they can't be writing.
Phew.
Yeah, what the hell do you do? And she said, because you're going to do that anyway. And I was like,
Yeah.
well, am I? Like,
Yeah, because there's 2 of the 3, lady.
yeah. Like,
So what were the 3 things you chose? Did you figure it
I
out?
haven't figured out yet. I thought I figured out some, but I just haven't found a way to make them daily. So I thought I would do this thing where I would, at least for a couple months or something, take all the songs that I have recorded and try and pitch them to different sync license companies or something like that.
Yeah.
But there's so much legwork involved in trying to figure out how to, like, who to pitch songs to and stuff, that I haven't made that. I was hoping that I would make that a daily process for a time, for some undetermined but like finite prescribed amount of time. Like however many songs I have like recorded, upwards of 30 but less than 50. Try and pitch all of these to somebody with like a purpose. I thought that could be a thing. But I got like 5 songs in and just lost, not lost interest, but like lost my footing.
It's a tedious process as well. It's like, man, if you are creative, that's the last thing you want to do.
Oh yeah.
I mean, you have to do it if you want to get into that stuff. But I mean, I don't know what platform you used. There are some really good ones, like Disco is a really good one.
Yeah, that's the only one that I was trying to use.
But dude, it's like, it's not just a matter of, oh, here's my song. It's called The Distance.
Okay. Yeah.
And I put it in there and I go, hey, for those listening, go listen to Garrett's song, The Distance. It's awesome.
Thanks.
But it's, it's not a matter of just putting that in and going, well, cool, next song.
Right.
It's like, man, they want everything. They want keys, BPM, stylistic sort of descriptions, lyrics, publishing information, songwriting information, copyright information, you name it. I'm sure I'm forgetting stuff, but you got platforms like Fiverr and Upwork and stuff like that, where like people are hiring people to do all these like just mundane random jobs so they don't have to do it themselves. Well, that's a job that I wish somebody would offer on those kind of platforms, because dude, I'd be like, $15 a day to tell this guy to go and upload songs for an hour? Yeah. Done.
Yeah.
And
then I thought I could make a project out of make a project out of trying to make like a database of all the venues in all of like big cities. Not that there's never an appropriate time to play a good show in a small town, but just try and make a list of venues that are in all of the like key big cities in the US. Maybe pick like a couple a day and try and make a list of venues. But right now, lots of venues are closing all across the US, man. Like, so you could make your list, and then the next day, 4 venues on your 10 venue list that you made yesterday are in their last week of business right now. Like, one of my favorite places to play in Fort Worth is in their last week of business right now. We opened for this guy there on Friday night. They will not be in business next Friday, I believe. Yeah. But so I mean, I was coming up with some. I was trying to listen to this life coach lady. And I swear, like I still have the desire to find 3 things to do per day that are in the name of like furthering my career, and they're not writing, and they're not playing. But what are they?
That's really interesting. Hey, you got to keep me updated on that. Like, I mean, obviously it won't be part of this podcast, but just on the side,
Yeah.
please. I'd love to know when you figure that out.
No, even just as like an act of solidarity. I'd love to have somebody to tell about it if I ever figure anything out.
Yeah, dude. I mean, that's amazing. Yeah, but please, you got my details, man. Anytime.
Hold on.
Here's a tough one. I find that like when you're an original artist, it's not always easy, obviously. And for those who've taken that road, they know that. But I sometimes think, and this is just my personal opinion, I sometimes think that outsiders see the music videos, they see touring schedules, they see merchandise, they see you at a venue potentially with a beer in your hand if you're a drink or whatever. And I think that the general conception is, oh, it's all glitter and unicorns, and man, that guy's living the best life. They don't often see some of the hardships that come with it. Now, that's not to, again, sound, derogatory or negative towards that outlook. If you don't know any better, that's just what it is. But what for you personally do you think are the hardest parts about trying to be a musician? A career musician, more specifically.
In my case, it seems to be, or something that I feel like I observed in this last 9 days, where in that like 9 days, I opened 6 shows for this guy, and I got to watch how his audience, I got to watch how how they react to me. And I also got to watch how his audience reacts to him and reacts with him or interacts with him. And I got to observe some things that are very interesting, but I haven't really figured out how to use this stuff anecdotally yet, but it's doing something in my brain. Like it's in here. I met this woman that she flew to Texas so that she could go to the last 3 shows. And this is no small task because our last 3 shows were Austin, Fort Worth, and Denton. So she had to fly to Austin to then like rent a car or have somebody Uber her to Fort Worth for the Fort Worth show. And she had a hotel in Dallas, I think, and had somebody Uber her to and from the Denton show, which was Saturday night. How do you cultivate a fan base that likes you so much that they will fly across the country and then Uber around to go to your shows?
Yeah, that's a great question.
What on, like, what? I mean, okay, this guy that I opened for, I mean, he was one of my biggest inspirations because he was the first person I ever knew personally who then like I knew him personally, and then 4 years later he was world famous.
Wow.
Not a household name, but world famous, like touring Europe.
Yeah.
Touring Europe in his tours booked by high level booking agents, not just like not going to Europe with your backpack and your guitar and saying that you're touring Europe. Not that, but like legit booking agents touring Europe. That kind of like within like 5 years after I met this guy, he was in a different place in life than me and all of our other musician friends. Like,
yeah.
So he was very inspiring to me. But I still don't have a clue. Like, how do you create that fan that will fly across the country?
Yeah.
And then get themselves Ubered or lifted all over Texas to watch you play 3 shows in a row. But if you can make some fans like that, then I think you can probably make a career.
Oh yeah, easy. I think statistically they say that if you can get 1,000 people who are willing to interact with every post, 1,000 people who interact with your mailing list, 1,000 people who, are willing to buy a new T-shirt every time it comes out, that while that might not make you rich per se, they say that like that's enough to sustain a career. Now I don't know how they got that number, but it's out there. You should ask your friend.
Yeah.
I'd be interested to know what he thought or she thought. And likewise, not to drag them into our previous question, you should ask them if they do a couple things, 2 or 3 things a day to progress their career. Because it'd be just interesting, because I can't imagine that it would be the same 3 things for everybody,
Yeah.
right? It has to be different things. I mean, we're all different. We're all wired different. We all listen different. And likewise for the lady who did fly to Texas for the last few shows, man, if you've got a song that can touch somebody in that kind of way, it might not be anything to even do with you. It might just be that song talks to them in such a way that they have to be there. I don't know. I'd love to know. Garrett, I've got one last question for
Cool.
you, and it's a bit loaded. So by all means, answer it as long or short as you like. It's something that I ask everybody. I always end my interviews like this. And it's not so much an actual quote or anything like that, but I'm going to ask you anyway. What do you think has been the best piece of advice you've either been given, or a piece of advice you can share that you've possibly learnt along the way in regards to trying to be a career musician?
I think I'll try. I'll actually try to answer both because I just feel uh, compelled to try and answer both. Um, I feel like the thing that maybe if I've kind of discovered this over time, it's that while I need space and I need to be able to create space within myself. Sometimes you can get so busy with just trying to stay alive, just trying to make it through life and trying to have a job. And uh, actually, like, even though doing this job of trying to help take care of my grandmother made me so isolated for a while that like I was so isolated I couldn't create art either. Like you like there like I need you need to you're a person, so you do in fact need people in your life.
Mm.
uh, um, but I think the thing that's been trying to kind of reveal itself to me for a long time is that like, you'll create more if you can kind of si- simultaneously like go easy on yourself. Like for me anyway, like try and take an easy does it approach to like life, to writing, to creativity, to if you like referring to it as art, then refer to it as art. If you prefer to refer to it as the work, then refer to it as the work. If I call it the work, I'm just never gonna do it. If I call it
Yeah.
if I call it the art, then that puts pressure on me, but I'll try to do it. If it's called work, I just won't do it.
Yeah.
So I mean that's kind of a something that I think has been trying to reveal itself to me for a long time. Um, some good advice that I think somebody gave me, and when I was asking this woman that is feel like she's really popular right now, at least in my world, she's really popular right now, and I had the opportunity to just ask her a question after she heard one of my songs, uh, and she said, "I think what I would tell you to do is to put your head down and just keep writing songs because I think." It's really easy to get stuck in, well, like I've written these songs, I've made this art. There should be more people trying to appreciate what I've done. And and what will actually make you easier to appreciate is if you just keep doing what you're good at. You like put your head down and just keep making the art that you're good at making. There will be more of it to appreciate. That and that by sheer volume increases the chances of enough people hearing one of those creations to make an impact. I mean, I wish that I had been like a Willis Allen Ramsey type guy who like, but anyway, somebody who gets popular off of one album and then they spend the rest of their lives touring on one album. But like, let's just talk about odds for a second. The odds that I even know somebody who's going to have that happen to them are very small. So, I think that what this woman told me, this woman that has a career and stuff, I think when she told me to just put my head back down and keep writing, I think that was very sound advice because
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's easy to get stuck in like, oh, I've made all this stuff. Why don't people care? Well,
Yeah.
the best way to give somebody a reason to care is to just keep doing what you're good at.
Yeah.
Hey, maybe we'll find out.
I think you're right, dude. And, there's an old saying, the cream rises to the top. I think we're living in a time of such saturation, as we briefly touched on earlier, that it's harder for the cream to rise to the top. But whether it's today or tomorrow or when a lot of artists or writers pass away, sadly, I do think the people who are supposed to find your music do. And obviously, there are elements that can favor that, marketing, money, PR, all that stuff. But I'm just talking from an organic point of view. I've found bands and musicians and songwriters and stuff in my life that the average person walking down the street wouldn't know. And that's okay. Sometimes it's kind of cool. Hey, I listen to this guy and he's not big, but he makes beautiful music. And then likewise, there's been times over the years where I thought, man, no one seems to know this band. And then next album, single blows up and they become the biggest band in the world. It happens.
I mean, maybe I get to be that guy the rest of my life. It's
Yeah.
like I get to be this guy who's like, there are times in my life where I'm like 80 mile radius, well known. But and people like, some people in the area like it that I'm not real popular, like that they can come see me and basically get a private show. But
Hey, well, listen, I tell you, I know you obviously didn't write the song, but mark my words, your version of Heart Shaped Box will eventually land up in some weird Netflix show, or, there's these dark shows. I don't mean that in like a weird, sadistic way, but like there's all these crime shows.
Oh, yeah.
There's all these, dude, that version, oh, it's going to happen. I don't know when, I don't know how, but mark my words, it will happen. When I was listening to that this week, I was like, how is this not on like a...
like it. Okay, somebody told me
It's great.
when I sent it to them, they were like, "This needs to be in the next season of True Detective so bad."
That kind of thing, right? Like that's exactly what I'm saying. Like True Detective, Banshee,
Oh yeah.
Ray Donovan, that kind of shit, dude. Like perfect for it. All right, excellent. Garrett Owen, dude, thank you so much for taking the time. I enjoyed our conversation, man. I encourage everybody to go and check out Garrett's music. His links are in our show notes. He's a fantastic singer, songwriter, artiste. Garrett, thank you, brother. I appreciate your time.
Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate you, man.
Amazing. There we have it. As usual, I want to thank Garrett for his time. I want to thank each and every one of you for your time. I know I say it in every episode, but the support means so much, so thank you. Please do leave us a rating or review if you haven't yet. It's really helpful. My name is Travis Mark. You can find out more about me at the musicians-mentor.com website. Until next time, keep working, practice hard, be diligent. Peace.